First Thessalonians 5 verse 17. Pray without ceasing. For without prayers, I may not be in front of you all today. If I'm being honest, it's a miracle that I'm here today. Because just a few months ago, I was admitted to the hospital. I was on the brink of death. I almost had multi-organ failure. And I honestly didn't know if I would make it out alive anymore. My entire life was put on hold, and my world was flipped upside down. It all started when I was 12. I was diagnosed with scoliosis. It was mild at first. I had an orthopedic doctor who told my mom that I should opt for surgery because I was so young at that time. We looked for a different doctor for a second opinion. We did find a different doctor, and he recommended a spinal brace. And that was the treatment used on me. Everything was going well. I had annual checkups for the next few years, and there was nothing I had to worry about. But it was when the pandemic hit, and everyone had to stay inside when things went downhill. It took us some time before we got back to the doctor, and when he saw my x-ray, he was shocked. I started with 42 degrees and jumped to 74 degrees. He told us that the braces couldn't handle the curvature of my spine anymore, and that I needed spinal fusion surgery because of the way I went from mild to severe scoliosis in that time span was not normal. After that, we went to different orthopedic surgeons, asking and praying to God who was the right one for my surgery. We chose St. Luke's Global. I knew it wasn't God's will at that time, but because I was so desperate for healing, I ignored all the signs. But God, in His infinite mercy, knew something was going to go wrong, which is why, for no apparent reason, a new machine was broken. Once again, me and my family were praying for the right doctors, surgeons, and nurses. And even after those bumps in the road, by God's grace, we found the right orthopedic surgeon and anesthesiologist. I was once again scheduled for my surgery, but in a different hospital this time. The same place I was born, Asian Hospital. My family and I fasted for months, asking God for wisdom and protection. And after months of praying and fasting, the day of my surgery came. Everything was fine so far. I was ecstatic about my surgery. I had friends and relatives asking me how I was and if I was scared. I told them I had nothing to fear because God protected me from death once. I knew in my heart that He would do it again. My surgery lasted about 12 hours, despite the doctors telling us it was supposed to be 8. I had fever when I got back to my room, and 4 packs of blood were given to me. After the surgery, I had an unbearable pain in my stomach, which was not normal, so they had to rule it out. I had an abdominal ultrasound, and they found out that my gallbladder was inflamed. They told me I had cholecystitis, and I was being referred to another surgery. 3 days after my spinal fusion surgery, I was back in the hospital. I was back in the operating room for laparoscopic cholecystectomy. I was given another pack of blood, which caused me chills and difficulty in breathing, so they had to stop the blood transfusion. I had an ultrasound, and the doctors told me that I had pulmonary edema, which is the condition caused by too much fluid in the lungs. And my ABG results showed I had metabolic acidosis, which is the buildup of acid in the body due to kidney disease or kidney failure. My main surgeon was already looking for a donor because I was diagnosed with acute kidney failure. And due to that, I also had seizures. Not only that, but my autostat, which is my oxygen saturation, decreased. It was so low that my doctors were already asking my family for consent that I would be intubated. But by God's grace, it was a miracle because instead of being intubated, I was connected to a BiPAP machine instead, which is a type of respiratory support, but a non-invasive type. My creatinine drastically increased to 850 milligrams, the normal creatinine level being 0.6 to 1.1 milligrams. And it meant that I needed to go through hemodialysis. Once again, I was back in the operating room. The doctors had a central line placed in my neck in preparation for the procedure. I had to go through 7 dialysis and 7 blood transfusions. My body was tired because all of the insertions and blood extractions. My veins and arteries collapsed after a lot of extraction. I already lost 22 pounds, my body feeling weaker each day that passed. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Nothing seemed to be getting better. My health was worsening day by day, and at that time, my mom asked me, "Anak, what is the one thing you haven't given to God?" She had an impression from the Lord that there was something I was holding on to, something I refused to surrender to God. And I told her I didn't know. As far as I knew, I had given up everything to Him. Little did I know, I had a seed of bitterness in my heart, and that seed grew in the back of my head. I wasn't aware of it at that time, but God revealed it to me. It was the way I was living my life. I lived as if I knew everything, that the world was black and white. I was overconfident. I knew how to cook, clean, and dry. I thought I understood everything about how the world works. I didn't ask help from anyone, even when I knew I needed it, because I thought I could do everything by myself. I lived my life as if God wasn't sovereign, but a God of convenience. I distanced myself from God because of my sin. I was hurt. I questioned God so many times in my head. What did I do to deserve this? Why did it have to be me? Why was this the burden I had to carry? I questioned God's authority and instead sought validation from the people around me, constantly worrying about what others think of me. All I wanted to be, just because I wanted to be, quote unquote, normal. I needed people to like me. I wanted to fit into the world's standards. At that time, I wanted to give up. I hadn't eaten in a whole week. The only drink I could have was limited. The only way I was breathing was through a machine. I had needles stuck into the back of my hand. I was getting blood extracted from my wrists every morning, like I was a rag doll. I felt weak and tired. My body was giving up on me, and I as well wanted to give up. That night, I talked to God. I said, "Lord, ayoko na. I can't take it. Please, please, I'm so tired. I want to be with you." And I heard the Lord's response. He told me, "Danee, do you really want to go?" At that moment, I thought about my family. I've seen how people grieve over their loved ones, the pain and despair they go through. It made me realize that yes, the pain will be over for me, but it will only hurt more in the people I will leave behind. That yes, the suffering will end, but what about my parents, my sister, who were by my side my entire life? Then I realized, why was I doing all this? Why was I forsaking the God who rose again just for someone as insignificant as me? I realized that if God breathed life into us, He can so easily take it away. That He alone is sovereign over my life. But He also gave us a choice to serve Him or to stray away from Him. I made my choice. I told God, no, I want to be with my family. The family I took for granted. I never asked for help. But I knew I couldn't fight this battle alone. Every morning I woke up, I would see my mom talking to different doctors, asking for my lab results, befriending all my nurses. She would always declare verses of healing onto me, sharing verses of strength and protection in my life. I can still remember how cold her hand was every time she held mine when I asked for prayers. I remember my dad would always play worship songs to help me sleep at night. I remember seeing him exhausted, his eyes red and downcasted, but he would always make it a point to make me smile and laugh, promising me that he would buy me my favorite chocolate cake when I got home from the hospital. And my sister, she would go from the hospital to school, then back to the hospital, just to be with me. She would tell me about her day and show me pictures of our cat. Even when I couldn't reply because of my BiPAP, I could only nod and point. But she would talk to me as if everything was normal, as if I wasn't sick. God made me understand that I wasn't alone, that I was fighting this battle with my family and the people who were fervent in praying with us, that the church is a family and the importance of a community in prayer. At that moment, I made a promise to God. I said, Lord, I will live my life to please you and you alone. After the promise I made to God, everything changed. I was allowed to drink a maximum of 500 ml for the next week, and a few days later, I was allowed to eat food. I was so happy. My creatinine was continuously decreasing. My BiPAP also shifted to a nasal cannula. My x-rays improved, and there was less fluid in my lungs. By God's grace, my hemodialysis was stopped because my kidneys miraculously healed. God answered our prayers and gave me reversible kidneys. My EEG, which is a test that measures electric activity in the brain, came out normal. So our family didn't have to worry about seizures anymore. With assistance, I was starting to be able to walk. I was getting better every day. And after almost a month of being in the hospital, by God's grace, I was discharged. I still had a few medications, but believing God that soon I wouldn't be needing any of them. And now, I'm not taking any left. I was supposed to die that day, but God showcased His infinite mercy, that He alone reigned sovereign in my life. That day, I found favor in God. He blessed me with another life, another chance to correct my mistakes. Our lives are in the palm of His hands, but He gave us the freedom to make our own choices. I chose to fight for my life, and God granted me that. There really is power in prayer and power when we call upon the name of Jesus. My story didn't end that day, and I will live the rest of my life honoring my promise to Him.